This year has been the year of the Harman, with many companies releasing their own take on this target. Likewise, Truthear has recently released something similar. Again, some say the Nova is the new $200 benchmark, while others claim it's in many variations. But starting with the low end, the Nova has a similar bass glide as the 7Hz Sonus, the variations, and the Blessing 3, which all can be often mid-bass shy for a lot of people, myself included. There's no bass bleed, very clean, well separated, uncolored, your typical Harman stuff. However, it is a bit light for me in the bass. The Nova has a very safe and inoffensive low end, but it doesn't have enough sub bass to create that bounciness, rumble texture like the variations, nor does it have enough mid bass for it to sound full like the Performer 5 and some other sets. Now, it is less scooped versus the variations, but it's not filled enough to be perceived as full bodied. The mid bass is pretty much dead neutral to my ears. Personally, I think you either go full scoop like the variations for that subwoofer like presentation and you still get engaging low end working with the scoop, or you fill in the scoop, add more mid bass, and have that meaty slam and impact. Because right now the Nova sits somewhere in between not enough sub bass and scoop, nor enough mid bass, which leads to a rather vanilla and forgettable low end. The bass is there, but it's in the background and it's not engaging in neither the sub bass nor the mid bass, so bass lovers, look elsewhere. However, the upside is that you get a cleaner mid-range and an overall bump in perceived clarity and separation versus some other warmer sets in this price category. I found the Nova to be great for female vocals. They're open, clean, extended, not the most powerful, but sweet, not hollow or wonky, so very textbook level Harman stuff. There is some masking in the 1.5 and 2K region, similar to the variations and most IEMs except for the RS5, but overall vocals are very, very clean. Well, maybe a bit too clean, since male vocals can sound light and not the fullest. But I will say Truthear has done a great job with the treble extension. It doesn't roll off or have peaks and unevenness like the Performer 5 and some of the planars in this price category. Treble is very smooth for the price, similar to the EM6L, but not as boosted, and scales better because it's less energetic. Technical performance wise, the Nova is around the same as the EM6L, which is still very resolving for the price. I would say it has slightly better separation and clarity, but not as sparkly or energetic and lively because the treble isn't as boosted as the EM6L. The Nova does very well in busier genres like rock and metal because of the clean sound signature, although I wouldn't recommend it for any of those genres because it lacks the mid bass for the drums, bass guitars, and rhythmic section in general. But that aside, it has great technical performance. It's a good set for pop, ballads, and indie. Again, very, very Harman. Does nothing wrong. It's the pinnacle of trying not to offend anyone. Well, maybe except for the bass heads, but if you want a clean and smooth sound without breaking the bank, then these would be a good pick. As for some comparisons, if you want a warmer, bassier, and fuller sound, then the Performer 5 or the Voodoo would still be the better choice. The low end is just more pronounced and highlights the bass better, more impact and physicality, and male vocals sound fuller, and overall just both are more engaging, but it's at the cost of treble extension and clarity, which the Nova does a lot better. Versus the EM6L, I do prefer the EM6L more and has a slightly warm and energetic sound. The EM6L to me is a more exciting version of the Nova, very similar resolution wise, but just not as clean in the separation because there is a little coloring. It's more enjoyable because it has a little coloring and warmer and sparklier, but it does have more gain than the Nova, so people who are sensitive in the upper mids region probably just go with the Nova. And as the comparison for the HEXA regarding the gain, the Nova sits in between the HEXA and the EM6L. The Kara, on the other hand, is smoother, a little bit airier and fuller sounding, but it's not as resolving as the Nova, and the separation isn't going to be nearly the same. The Kara is recommended for higher volume listening for rock and metal tracks, and it scales very, very well, but again, resolution wise, the Nova is just much better. Similarly, the Heyday is also very good for rock, punk, and metal. It has more treble detail and more mid bass, and to me, it's a slightly better version of the Nova. I mean, I guess you can argue that it has planar timbre, the lightness to the notes, but the Nova also does have a vanilla low end, which makes it light and clinical leaning, which is arguably worse. But I will say the Nova is smoother in the treble and overall over the Heyday, although I do enjoy the Heyday more because it has more liveliness to the sound. As for the Hexa and Sonus, they're both very similar to the Nova, very vanilla in the low end, with the main difference being that the Nova is just more resolving and more detailed. I don't think it's worth upgrading from the Hexa or the Sonus alone to the Nova, but if you're coming from something like the 7Hz Zero, the Wanar, the True, then the Nova would be a noticeable bump in technicalities. Instead, the better comparison would be that the Nova is a mini Blessing 3, so less bright, but with more sub bass, and obviously not as quite resolving and technical. It's around 85%, 90% there for half the price. The bigger difference comes when you compare the Nova to the variations. The low end, although, you know, again, a little bit more scooped on the variations, is more engaging because of that bouncy subwoofer bass, as well as having overall better resolution. So unfortunately, no, the Nova is not quite a mini variations replacement. Maybe that's the binary, but that's future video. A better comparison again would be to the Blessing 3, very similar in the vocals, the treble just a little bit less sharp, I guess, and a little bit more sub bass. With all that said, the real question is, who is the Nova for? Well, it's not for those who have a low-end heavy or exciting library like hip-hop, EDM, rock, metal, or even very exciting K-pop and J-pop songs. The EM6L or Heyday would be better in those scenarios because, again, of the extra mid-bass as well as the extra treble energy. It's just more enjoyable, and that's the whole point of this hobby, right? To enjoy the music. Nova is also not for those who already have something like the Hexa and Sonus, because it would just be a bit redundant in my opinion and not too big of an upgrade. The Blessing 3 would be the actual bigger jump from the Sonus if you wanted something similar. Which means the only two real scenarios for the Nova is that, number one, if you're coming from something like the 7Hz Zero and you like that clean sound, so your library has a lot of indie, acoustic, classical, you know, nature vibes, I don't know, but you want more detail and clarity with a clean sound. Or number two, if you don't have a clean Harman neutral set and you want to have it in your collection or at least experience it for what it is. Other than that, I don't know, man, it's just another Harman. These companies really gotta stop releasing Harmans. It's turning into this whole Araya clone ordeal all over again. Oh no, Timmy. But yeah, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, guys. Chop in and Kiwi years on the way. I'll see everyone in the next video.